The clock struck midnight, and the fluorescent lights flickered overhead in the small convenience store. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and old magazines. Jamie, the lone clerk, leaned against the counter, fighting off sleep. The store was usually quiet at this hour, a graveyard for night owls and the occasional late-night snacker. Jamie had taken the night shift to save money for college. It was a simple enough job: bring up customers, stock shelves, and keep the place clean. But as the hours dragged on, a sense of unease crept over him. The store felt different at night. Shadows moved in the corners of his vision, and the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than usual. He glanced at the clock again. 12:15 a.m. Just a few more hours until dawn. He sighed and picked up a magazine from the rack, flipping through the pages absent-mindedly. The stories of celebrity gossip and fashion felt distant and unimportant. His mind wandered to the stories he'd heard about the store. They said it was haunted, cursed even. But Jamie dismissed those tales as nothing more than urban legends. The bell above the door jingled, pulling him from his thoughts. A figure stepped inside, cloaked in darkness. Jamie squinted, trying to make out the person's features. The customer was tall and thin, dressed in a long coat that seemed to swallow them whole. The hood obscured their face, leaving only a shadow where eyes should be. "Can I help you?" Jamie called out, his voice echoing in the stillness. The figure didn't respond. Instead, they moved slowly down the aisles, their footsteps barely making a sound. Jamie felt a chill run down his spine. He watched as the stranger picked up random items: a bag of chips, a soda, a pack of gum, without ever looking at them. It was as if they were in a trance. Since Jamie tried again, feeling the weight of the silence. "Are you going to buy anything?" The figure paused, slowly turning their head towards Jamie. The hood shifted, and for a moment Jamie thought he saw a flash of pale skin beneath it. Then the figure returned to their wandering, as if Jamie hadn't spoken at all. Feeling uneasy, Jamie decided to ring up the last customer, an elderly woman who had come in just before the strange figure arrived. She shuffled to the counter, her eyes wide and darting. "Be careful, dear," she whispered, glancing nervously at the figure. "They're not what they seem." "What do you mean?" Jamie asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "They come in at night," she said, her voice trembling. "They take things that don't belong to them." Before Jamie could ask more, the woman hurried out, the bell jingling behind her. He turned back to the figure, who was now standing at the end of the aisle, staring blankly at a shelf of snacks. Jamie's heart raced. "Are you going to buy anything?" he asked again, his voice firmer this time. The figure turned slowly, and Jamie felt a wave of dread wash over him. The hood fell back slightly, revealing a face that was both familiar and terrifying. It was his own face, but twisted and pale, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around them. Jamie stumbled back, knocking over a display of candy bars. The figure smiled, a slow, sinister grin that spread across its face like a shadow. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, the voice echoing in Jamie's mind. He turned and ran, bursting through the door into the night. The cool air hit him like a slap, but he didn't stop. He sprinted down the street, heart pounding, breath coming in gasps. He didn't look back, didn't stop until he reached his apartment, slamming the door behind him. Inside, he leaned against the door, trying to catch his breath. The figure's face haunted him, a twisted reflection of himself. He tried to convince himself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of his imagination brought on by exhaustion. But deep down he knew something was wrong. The next night Jamie returned to the store. nerves frayed but determined to face whatever had scared him away. The night was quiet, the store empty except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustle of plastic bags. He kept glancing at the clock, waiting for midnight to strike. When the bell jingled at 12 a.m., Jamie's heart raced. He turned to see the figure standing in the doorway just as before. It wore the same long coat, the same hood obscuring its face. Jamie felt a surge of fear but stood his ground. "What do you want?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the stillness. The figure stepped inside, moving with an unnatural grace. "I want what you owe," it said, its voice a chilling whisper that sent shivers down Jamie's spine. "What do you mean?" he asked, backing away. The figure raised a hand, revealing a long, bony finger. "You took something that belongs to me." Jamie shook his head, confusion mixing with fear. "I don't understand." The figure stepped closer, and Jamie could see its face more clearly now. It was like looking into a dark mirror, the features twisted and wrong. "You took my life," it hissed, "and now it's time to pay." Suddenly, memories flooded back to Jamie, moments he had buried deep. The night he had been driving home after a party, the flash of headlights, the sickening crunch of metal. He had walked away unscathed, but someone else hadn't. Someone had died that night, and Jamie had never thought of them again. "I didn't mean to," he stammered, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't know." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed like broken glass. "Ignorance does not absolve you. You took my future. Now I will take yours." Panic surged through Jamie. He turned and ran, darting through the aisles, but the figure was faster. It moved like smoke, slipping through the shelves, closing the distance between them. Jamie could feel its cold breath on his neck, could hear the whispers of lost souls echoing in his ears. He burst through the back door, stumbling into the alley behind the store. The night was dark, the only light coming from the flickering street lamp at the end of the lane. He ran, heart pounding, but the figure was still behind him, relentless and hungry. "Help!" Jamie shouted, but the streets were empty. No one was around to hear him. He turned a corner, desperate to escape, but the figure was there, blocking his path. "Please," Jamie begged, falling to his knees. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was young and stupid." The figure tilted its head, the grin widening. "And now you will understand the price of your actions." With that, it lunged forward, and Jamie felt a cold grip around his throat. He gasped, struggling to breathe, but the figure's hold was unyielding. Darkness closed in around him, and he felt himself slipping away. Just as everything faded to black, Jamie heard a voice, soft, melodic like a lullaby. "You can't escape your past, Jamie. You must face it." He opened his eyes, finding himself back in the store, standing behind the counter. The clock showed 12:01 a.m. Confused, he looked around, but everything seemed normal. The shelves were stocked, the lights were bright, and the store was empty. But then he heard it, the soft whisper of a child's laughter echoing in the aisles. Jamie's heart raced as he turned to see a small girl standing at the end of the store. She was no older than 6, with dark hair and wide, innocent eyes. "Help me," she said, her voice sweet but tinged with sadness. "Where are your parents?" Jamie asked, moving towards her. "They're gone," she replied, her gaze fixed on him, "just like mine." Suddenly the figure appeared behind her, looming like a shadow. Jamie froze, a dread flooding his veins. The girl turned to look at the figure, and for a moment their eyes met, his own reflection staring back at him, twisted and broken. "Run!" Jamie shouted, but the girl didn't move. She stood there, trapped in a moment of fear, as the figure reached out a hand. Jamie lunged forward, grabbing the girl and pulling her away from the figure. "We have to go," he yelled, dragging her towards the door, but the figure was faster, blocking their escape. "Let her go," Jamie screamed, desperation clawing at his throat. The figure laughed, the sound echoing in the empty store. "You think you can save her? You can't even save yourself." With a surge of adrenaline, Jamie pushed the girl behind him, shielding her from the figure's cold grasp. "I won't let you take her," he shouted, feeling a fire ignite within him. The figure's laughter faded, replaced by a low growl. "You cannot fight what you owe." But Jamie didn't care. He felt the weight of his past pressing down on him, the guilt and regret rising like bile in his throat. He had to protect this girl, to save her from the fate he had escaped. "I refuse to let you win," he shouted, and in that moment something shifted. The lights flickered, and the air grew heavy with energy. The figure hesitated, confusion flickering across its twisted face. "Your fear gives me power," it hissed. But Jamie stood firm, drawing strength from the girl behind him. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," he declared, feeling the warmth of hope surge within him. "I will face my past, and I will save her." With a roar, he charged at the figure, arms outstretched. The figure shrieked, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. Jamie felt a surge of energy as he collided with it, a blinding light enveloping them both. When the light faded, Jamie found himself back in the store, the girl safe in his arms. The figure was gone, leaving only a whisper in the air. "You cannot escape your past, but you can change your future." Jamie looked down at the girl, who smiled up at him, her eyes bright and clear. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. He had faced his fears, confronted the darkness that had haunted him for so long, and in doing so, he had found a way to break the cycle. As dawn broke outside, Jamie stepped out of the store, the first rays of sunlight warming his face. He took a deep breath, feeling alive for the first time in years. The past would always be a part of him, but it no longer held him captive. He turned to the girl, who was still beside him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she replied, her smile radiant. "Let's get you home, Lee," Jamie said, determination filling his heart. "And then we'll make sure no one else has to face the darkness alone." Together they walked into the morning light, leaving the shadows of the night behind.